Welcome to the first event of Live 2015, the 9th edition of the Live International Performance Art Biennale. I would like to acknowledge that we are on Salish Musqueam territory and thank them for their hospitality. I'd like to thank M. Jonah for producing this event. I'd like to thank you all for coming out. Tonight we're talking about transnational curatorial practices with Nathalie Bikoro and Willem Wilhelmus. Nathalie is from Gabon and currently living in Berlin, and Willem is from Holland and currently living in Finland. I'd like to also introduce my co-director of the Live Biennale, Stacy Ho, who would like to say a few smarter words about what tonight's about.
Thank you, Randy, and thank you to SFU's Office of Community Engagement for hosting us tonight. What was I going to say? I forget. Yeah, so... Huh? So when I was thinking about why to put together this talk, I was looking at... Randy actually was telling me about this festival that Willem puts on called Mother Tongue Festival, and I was researching it online. And I came across this term, transcultural, which interested me very much. I thought I knew what it meant, but I'd never heard of it before. And through wondering about the Mother Tongue Festival, which is a performance art festival where artists are invited to perform, artists living in cultures that they do not consider their own.
I talk about that later.
Yeah, okay. So, thinking about that, and then I was having a Skype conversation with Nathalie, and she was telling me about all these amazing curatorial projects that she was doing as well. And I was wondering, or I really wanted to find out I wanted to learn more about what this term transcultural meant. And yeah. And so I came up with a few questions, which we can get to later, but maybe we can just open up the dialogue now.
Hello. So maybe, thank you, Stacy. Thank you, Randy, for inviting us and letting us speak about what we are doing. It's great for us to be together and to share experiences. I just want to add some butter. You just put the jam on the toast, but you forgot the butter, so so Willem and I, we know for each other since 6 years now, and he invited me many years ago to Finland as part of a program that he curated with other artists. And we are both artists working live art, and we are also curating different programs. And so we've been invited as part of Live to give you a little bit of an introduction about how we work, what we do on terms of international scale, and this idea of transcultural spaces. What does it mean in a time when it's very challenging to get funding? So maybe Willem can introduce you to a few words about the project first.
I thought you would be first. She's clever. She's really good. Yeah. So I'm the butter, yeah? If I understand the things right. Okay. Transcultural. Yeah, that was immediately, that was a bit like where things... I really need this, huh? My voice is loud enough. No, okay, good. I do. Oh, it looks so strange, you know. I get my L. You know. No, there was immediately some confusion when this title of this talk about transcultural praxis, or I don't even know how you really said it, but. So I got the impression. So I wrote you an email back, like what do you mean by transcultural? Because it sounded more like just asking international, you know, opening up an event or whatever you organize for, and with international guests, which is in itself already. Don't we call that cross-cultural? Something like that, huh? Yeah, we need to, I like all these terms, cross-cultural, transcultural, no-cultural. Andy. Randy cultural. Yeah. But transcultural, and then I immediately found also like, yeah, Canada and Finland, it's quite a big difference in how the whole country is also feeling. I mean, Canada is a huge country, so yeah, how many people are really coming from abroad here? And if they come, then they are probably from the United States, and that's close by, and it's the same kind of culture. You talk the same language, yeah, English, United States. Sorry, I don't want to say that you're all American, but no, I think it's very close. Now, and in Canada, yeah, as far as I know, there are only people living, or mostly the people living, they all come from outside. Huh? That's very clear. We still have the First Nation people, and but they are kind of marginalized and good. But everybody here it's very normal to be from another culture. It's funny also for me now to look here in Vancouver and hear and seeing on the street and hearing like, oh, 60% of the population here is from Chinese roots, or that's quite something. Well, I live in Finland, and Finland is maybe one of the few Western European, or the only Western European, maybe Iceland also, but anyway, it's a very homogeneous country. There are real Finns living there. Mostly only real Finns. There's only 2% of the population is in the meantime. In these 20 years that I live in Finland, when I came there it was 1%, and now it's already double, you know, 2 times more people from foreign origin. So the Finns are really feeling already a bit squeezy now, so because of all these foreigners coming. It's a very different situation. Yeah, how to say that? You know, okay, let's go back a bit further in history, because the Finns are only living there, I think 6,000 years ago they started to come there. But there were already some people then. And these were the Sami people that are mostly known as people from Lapland. Huh? But only other people call them Lapland. I don't know why, but they call themselves mostly Sami. And they lived among other places, but on the whole of Finland, Finnmark, and they had to go north, you know. So they are still there, but very much north. And I don't know, Finland is already very, very north. long winters. So if you go a bit further north, well, then you can compare it with the north of, really the north of Canada. And so long winters, dark only, and yeah, not so easy to live. That's where the Sami live. Good. The Finns are living in Finland, and they managed over all these thousands of years to stay this homogeneous country. Yeah. And so transcultural artists, we call that in Europe those who are coming from another culture and living in a new country, in a new culture. So me, I'm from Holland. I'm already so I'm transcultural artist. So, or Nathalie, she's coming from Gabon. She's living in Germany. So you could say she's a transcultural artist. Mother tongue, my mother tongue is Dutch. I can talk that in Finland, but nobody will understand me. So I have to manage with something else. And, okay. Transcultural. Is it now clear? No. It's so silent. I think nobody understands it.
Maybe you can introduce us to the project, Mother's Tongue, like who were the artists involved, why you chose the artists, and what was the concept? What were you trying to achieve with the festival?
She's so clever. She really wants to let me talk first. But we had another appointment, huh? Yeah. Yes, yeah. Okay, good. Then I go just further. Transcultural artists. I am organizing events since a bit over 10 years, maybe 12 years, where I invite other people, to other artists, to do their work, to show their work, their performance art. And I did that for a long time on a regular basis. It's called art contact events, because I think via art, contact is possible, and via contact, also art is possible. So I like this term, art contact, in that sense. And in the course of the years, I saw that every time when I invited some artists, maybe 4 artists for an evening, there would be one Finnish artist, total Finn, one from abroad, and then 1 or even 2 from foreign origin, so a transcultural artist. There we are again. And I thought, like, at some point, after a few years, I thought, like, this is a good reason to celebrate this fact that actually transcultural artists are so active. And also to ask a bit, like, how come that, especially in this country where there are only 2% of the population is of foreign origin, but of the artist community, it is about like 5 to 10%, especially of the more the experimental live art. Then it's more than 10%, then maybe 15% of the artists is foreign origin. Those who are also active in organizing events, it's even more. It's 25 or 30% of the art of those are of foreign origin. So I thought, like, we have to celebrate that, and so that's where I initiated. That was 4 years ago, the Fake Fin Festival. So I thought, like, this is nice to stand up, you know, and to say it loud. I'm a fake Finn. I'm not even trying to be a real Finn. My Finnish is ridiculous, you know. And but I don't have the culture, and I don't want to pretend that I will ever become a good Finn. No, it's not only because I cannot talk, but I am not like that. But I have a lot to give anyway, so I'm proud on being a fake Finn. And so I invited also other 20 more artists, 20 more fake Finns, so to say. And for them it was really also, or for us all, it was a very deep experience to see that from each other, and to recognize it from each other. Like, oh yeah, okay, the similarity in that you cannot lean back on old friends of, oh yeah, no, I know this guy from school, and you can go there and there, or oh, he is in the committee for giving grants. Yes, I know him from that and that time. No, no backgrounds, no back doors. You have to start from scratch if you are coming from abroad and living in a new culture. And so most of the, I just say it, where it's not scientifically proved maybe, but proven, but I think it's really true that transcultural artists, they have to be more active, so they are more active. So, but they have to, because if you're not more active than the Aboriginal artists, then you're out. You have no chance then, because they will go in front of with all the chances. And yeah, oh yeah, this is maybe a nice moment because now I'm talking about this fake Finn festival. Do you remember? Can you show shortly this booklet? Front, sorry. No, that's not this one. Yeah, this is this one. So, the nice thing of this, I have to see it myself, otherwise. The nice thing is, Thomas Schrama, he was my partner in organizing things. And he's from Poland originally, like no coincidence. I mean, it's just like that. And he made this graphic design of the Fake Fin Festival. So you see, of course, you see all kind of flags there. Those are the flags of the countries where all the people, all the artists came from originally. And he put them in this blue cross, which, so in itself this forms the flag of Finland. And so I think it's very nice in that sense. So I wanted to show that. And all right, you can read this, yeah? Fake Fin Festival of Experimental Live Art. Yeah. Yeah, and then you can show also, you can start that other slideshow. That was also part of the project. I had the idea to, it is something to be in Finland. Only artists could be part of that who would live at least 3 years in Finland, because only then you count as a real fake Finn. You cannot just come in and say like, hey, hi, I'm a fake Finn. No, it's not like that. Should be a bit more up maybe, because this is important. What is under it, so that it can be read, because that's the fun of it. My God. Lens shift, yeah. Well, okay, I can tell you also, I mean, it's not so special maybe, but you see under the photo is the name, yeah? Egle Odo, she was one of the artists. And then behind it is 5 years. So, yeah, you can go, no, well, yeah. So this Han Chu Min, she is, oh Jesus, 7 years. Yeah. Oh, it's so dark. Jaap Klevering, 28 years. And James Andine, 6 years. And Johanna MacDonald, she is from Canada, 9. And John Court, 14 years. Christina Juntila, 9 years. And Magnus Logi Christensen. It's very dark, I would say. How is that possible? I thought, like, you have wonderful equipment here. Okay. Yeah, but then they don't see for the... Doesn't help very much, yeah? Magnus Logi Christensen, and he is 7 years. But look at the faces, huh? Yes. Marek Pluchenik, 11 years. And Oliver Whitehead, 40 years. I mean, after such a time, you show only your feet, you know. And Panos Balomenes, 7 years. Yeah. Philip Pedersen, 11 years. Or 14, I cannot see that. Okay. Yeah, Robin de Wan, 13 years. And Roy Vara, a lifetime he's serving. And Shinji Kangi, he's 26 years. Thomas Shrama, 13 years. And Willem Wilhelmus, 17 years. This was 5 years ago, so, no, 4 years ago. Yes, so, and Baba, Chand Baba, Jacke Romanes, 6 years. Our good friend, he died last year. That was not very nice, but Baba, his spirit is still there. Yes, so we had these photos, you know, in a gallery, as an introduction, so people came in and they saw first this photo series of, yeah, well, I don't know what is your association, but we don't need to talk about that. But it's like this feeling of like, oh my God, you are already 14 years in Finland, you still live here, you know, like that. Yes. Okay, but we got a lot of energy out of this festival, and out of this being together. And whenever I was talking about this fake film festival, especially in Europe again, like people were really enthusiastic, and they were like, oh, this is nice, and so. It started to get a bit bigger circles, and then I thought also like, yeah, well, this phenomenon is not only it's not only for Finland. There are in any other country in Europe. There are people from other countries living. So then 2 years ago. We organized this festival, Uprooted Fake Nations, to make the fake even a bit bigger, you know, the fake. And last year, it was an extra thing. So like it was even more focused, again, with a lot of transcultural artists from all kind of countries. This was a huge festival with 30 artists over 5 days or so, and 20 from abroad. And that was called Mother's Tongue. And this Mother's Tongue festival, that had as an... so all the artists were living in a culture where they could not speak their mother's tongue. So that was the basic thing. And it came also, I contacted some... researchers from the Helsinki University, from the social science, and asked them if they would be interested to make a kind of an anthropologic research. For this question, is there a correlation between not speaking your mother tongue, not being able to speak your mother tongue where you live, and the artistic activity or the creative activity? And they said, yes, good. Probably because we got very good funding. Anyway. And so this was a nice thing where it came together, social science and arts, for a project, and so all the artists were interviewed by one of those two researchers, and they gave also a course. Students were involved, students of anthropology. And they came also to the festival. They talked with artists. They were hanging around and sniffing the energy of such a festival and with the talks to the artists. Actually, I don't know exactly what they did with it, but because that is still in the process, and we are in the process also of making a catalog about this whole, not just a event, or a book is it more than about this event, where it is not only a description about art, the art actions, but it should come together also with the research, that there is some kind of nice stories, the narratives also of the interviews and the biographies of people. Yeah, let's see, but that's also a lot of work. And just before I went into the plane, I pushed the button for the for the application for some money for the catalog. So it's in the running. And yeah, that's shortly what I can tell. Or it was not short, huh? Sorry. Now it's you. And Nathalie, she's always there. You know, Mother's Tongue, you were there. And and Fake Nations. You're only not a fake Finn, but for the rest, now tell something. How was it?
So I know all the real stories, and you didn't tell any of them. But I mean, I just filled up a little bit of the holes that you missed out about this idea of fake nations, fake Finns. I think what was interesting about the project is that now, you know, especially with the current discourse, political discourse that you see in Europe and anywhere else, for that matter of fact, is that this idea of immigration and migrant has become a phenomena. It's never been a phenomena. This is something that's part of our culture, heritage, for a very long time. And a very well-known writer called Achim Mambe, he's a Cameroonian writer on post-colonial theory, who is now teaching in South Africa. I met him a few years ago, and he exactly made this point that he asked this question: what is Nigeria? What is Cameroon? What is South Africa? What does it mean? What does Germany mean? What does France mean? What does the United States mean? He said to me, it's bullshit. Nigeria is bullshit. Canada is bullshit. France is bullshit. Germany is bullshit, and so on. But he was being very serious, because what he was actually saying is that a nation is there so that it anthropologizes and it creates divisions and identities that are fixed, that can never move. So this idea of the transcultural that you can talk about in Mother's Tongue and Fake Nations, it's all about decolonizing. That's what it means for me. It's about reconstructing memories, and it's also about this question of integration. So there's a few conferences I was in Europe, and one of the main introductions, of course, by the top professors of the university, always the same speeches and saying, how can we better as a country, you know, make sure that the immigrants that come in, how we can integrate them, how can the others integrate themselves in Europe? And actually, this has always been the wrong question to ask. The question is to ask, I will talk in a German context here. I asked the question, how should Germany integrate in a transcultural world, because it's very, very late. And this is for every single country applies. So it's about instating power and how you have fixed positions and how you can break it. So now I will introduce a little bit to the project Squat Monument. And it was back in 2008 and 2009. This, in my country, in Gabon, for those who don't know, it's in West Coast Africa, next to Cameroon. We have been under a regime, a dictatorship, for over 45 years. We had the same presidents, although we are supposed to have democratic election every 4 years. The president dies in 2009, Omar Bongo. And of course, unfortunately, is replaced by his son, who's Nigerian. And this is where Squat Monument started, because it was this idea of transculturality as a form of resistance. Now, you know, of course, being from another continent, there is also this kind of looking to a continent like a one nation. But Gabon itself, for example, I think 75% of the population is mixed. There's no such thing as Gabonese. When we talk about our nationalities, it's not about, you know, you don't say I'm Gabonese, you say I'm Fan from the tribe Bantu. You talk about this tribal ancestry. So it's all about memory. You don't say about which country you come from, because it's not part of the tongue, it's not part of the language. So Squat Museum was a bit of a resistance against the political violence that was happening. And I started it with a group of students and different people, and of course some of my family members. And it was a traveling exhibition by boat, by car, and by foot. And we go to different localities. Basically, we were following we were spying, following. Each party was going through different villages to buy votes from people. And there was nothing democratic about it, because the way they used to buy their votes is to make irrelevant speeches and assert their position through putting money on the table to buy people's votes. And this money does not go far, because what it does is that it handicaps the people. The men buy alcohol, they don't have job, they don't integrate in their community, and so the movement is very still, especially in villages, in the forest, and by the water. So for me, it was a transcultural project, because the people involved and the communities we go around to were from different countries around the continent. So there were a lot from Nigeria, South Africa, Namibia, Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Cameroon. And it will be the same movement as in Europe. You come to make a new life, to find job, or because of family. And one of the resistance about the project was this idea that there was no freedom to find a voice and to speak aloud. And also, in Gabon, there is no cultural space. There is no museum. There is no art gallery. Because it's not a space that seems to be important on a governmental level, and everything is frozen. And so the format of it is not a festival at all. It's really, the format is very much an experimentation, and it's more of a dialogue. And so I guess the performativity is, in a sense, how you become conscious of or aware of your daily surroundings. So maybe if you want to hit the video for me, that would be great. Without the sound, yeah? Okay. And so this is some of the sort of highlights of what Squat Monument looked like. It started in Gabon, but then you see some places like it goes to Senegal. This is in Senegal, in Saint Louis. And then it goes all the way to Brazil, in Belo Horizonte. We worked in the favela Santa Lucia. And what can I say about it further? What was very interesting was this idea of memory. How do you create your own memory? Because what came about in this experimentation is that people did not really know about this idea of mother tongue. I think is very important because for me the tongue is not the original language, but what you do with it, how you change it, how you break it. And so a lot of for example, there was a lot of resistance against talking the tribal language because it was seen as inferior. And this mentality comes from the colonial history and what it leaves behind. So sometimes a lot of, especially the younger generation, they are mixing the languages a lot. They are speaking in English, French, German, Portuguese. And the way to recollect memory was to work together. So we had different spaces, and each space the task was comment on this problem. So most of the tasks were to deal or comment with pollution and the oppression of how the government does not fund towards the population. You have to understand on the political context that Gabon is one of the richest countries politically, but it doesn't invest in any of the population. So there is about 25% of the population which is very, very rich, and everybody's below the supposedly national wage, if that even exists. I'm not sure. So this idea, for me, I guess, what can performance do? What is performance? For me, it's a reconstruction of memory and how you can build a community that will start to form a sort of decolonized space. And this will be a lot through discussion, interaction, through food, or going through spaces. So it would be in different frames, like walking together and doing imitations of how one represents each other, for example, or how we make food together. Because in a very small country, we have a lot of conflicts from one place to another. Even a village from Bitam to Oyem, 20 kilometers away, and there's a lot of physical conflicts, also religious in a way, I guess. And so it's all about de-exotifying and demystifying each other's spaces. So for me, I work in very small localities, but for me, that's exactly the transcultural. Yeah, it's working with the locality because each locality is already global, and it's this sense of breaking away from the anthropological panopticon gaze. So panopticon gaze means something that comes to the center, that is fixed. There's no other narrative. Anything around it is excluded. It comes from a Foucaultian vocabulary. And so what was very important about the project, it was very difficult to record it because mostly it was me taking pictures, but during the travels, there were a lot of dangerous situations because we were going through different checkpoints, so a lot of things got stolen or destroyed. And also this idea that you have to respect other people's spaces. In a lot of, especially in the rural areas, of course, this idea of photography is still this idea that somebody's taking something from you, like taking your soul. So, and I never trust the camera, I never trust images because I think that it starts to create an image that is so fixed that people can't get away from. It's so easy to exotify. So this is you. I only make an exception here just so that you can get a sense. But when I present the project, I'm very careful with images. It's a hard decision to make, because I notice if I do, it's kind of, can you break away from this exoticization the same way as, as other countries, or how, in West Africa, how they would see the West, or how they would see white people. You cannot, it's very hard to break away from. And performance is all about this idea of demystifying and being able to decolonize from this idea of the nation, from this idea of the fixed representation. And for me, this is what means this kind of transcultural is breaking away from something, going through something, and it's never fixed. You always try to catch, but it's always moving. So for me, I kind of evolved it when I went to different places, especially in Brazil, because for me it was the same type of spaces that I was dealing with. It's mostly rural spaces, and it's the same dialogues, the same investigations that happen. And I'm not very interested in this idea of the show, of the spectacle so much. The format is that instead of bringing something from the outside, already like exotifying like an object and waiting for this show, it's more about reflection on oneself and using the ritual of the everyday, whether it's in cooking or whether it's in dialogue or sharing, for example, passing on stories to the younger people, to the older people, and how this generates this form of decolonization is very important for me in my work, in my personal work also. And I was asked about this idea of, I think Stacey, you mentioned on email, this idea of format, what strategies I use or methodologies to use, but you can only create them, construct them when you're on site, because it's for each group, each person. And you can, because as soon as you have a specific methodology and you try to apply it to everywhere, then it's another form of, you don't decolonize anymore. You recolonize in a way. And I think with a lot of the discourses and how sometimes we curate and where the funding is going and how it navigates us as artists, as curators, to make decisions and how we format things. For me, it's very important that expression can move and it can shift investigations, it can shift things. And it's very dangerous, we always fall in the line that we have to use fixed categories, instead of escaping from our, from these boxes. So that's why I see it as a form of resistance, in a way. So every spaces, whether it's rural or urban, is kind of investigation of what is the quotidian life. So it's for example, building a house made out of bread in Brazil, and how the people construct it together, and what it is, what you do, can you eat it because it's art? But of course you can eat it. And it's very interesting to see the difference between a Western context, for example, and or another space. And for me, I have a big issue with the image. I don't trust it. I'm very... So it's about, I guess, empowerment, and especially... Recently, I'm working much more with women, because I see also, as a mother, the obstacles of working in such spaces, that you navigate the spaces. They are mostly masculine, but it's the women that are actually making the shift in society. Every single space you go, whether it's in China or in West Africa, South Africa, or in Brazil, the women are shifting things around, but it's it's very much mediated, controlled by the male position. It's very masculinized. So this idea of reclaiming history also it's maybe a form of femininity. It's not about excluding men, but it's about really understanding what community does and how it works together. I don't call myself feminist, but I thought, yes. I'm trying to think of how to think about it and how to talk about it simply. So, and I like this idea of you know, fake nation, because it's this idea of integration, and who integrates, you know, and for me it was also this idea that Finland need to integrate. Yes, I think it's very lost society, I don't know, and we seem to be going much, instead of going to the future, we seem to be regressing into a past that don't exist, because I think even in our past we were much more nomadic and settlers and learning from each other. And now everything has a division, everything has a cultural space, a cultural place where you cannot mix, and it's a form also of power. And it's very important that for me the community has a sense of voice, and they tell their own story. And performativity is exactly about that. I don't expect somebody to make a, if I think, especially in rural spaces, that as a woman, if you want to make performance art in this context, it's immediately you are excluded. They will see you maybe as a witch, or I was arrested twice, and it's really not, you know, it's really not a clever thing to do. Because you put yourself into danger, and you put your family into danger as well, and they do whatever they want with you. Again, it's a very male space. They will cut your hair, they will tell you what they're going to do with you, and then what it takes to get you out of there is simply money. Everything is based on money. So this is one of the schools in Bitam. This is in my village, where I work, and there's the Cultural Arts Center there, which was vandalized a couple of times because of the way I was working was too foreign, and it was a woman organizing, and I found that there were so many obstacles as a woman to work in such spaces. So it's always an idea. I like also this idea to be transgender in a way, and not in a literal way, but really it's a way of working, a way of thinking. It's a form of resistance, and how do you empower yourself in such a, because it was very dangerous to work in such spaces when you are traveling like this all the time. And next year it starts again. We have the next elections, and I'm not looking forward to it. I have to say, because the last time we had one of the actions was to protest. So there was a group of students who were protesting in Port-Gentil, the second biggest city after Libreville. And we were protesting just to get democratic votes for the elections after 45 years, very peaceful, and they just sent the army and shot at us. And I was saved by my cousin, and we were running, and about, I think, 125 students got shot that day. Half of them didn't get a burial, and there was no mention about it in the media. Yes, Gabon, who cares? It's a francophone country. During the elections, who has the power? Who has the power to speak? Who has the power to say? But for me, this is what performance does. It's about shifting spaces, shifting people, but you risk a lot. Yeah? So who are you responsible for, etc. It's something that for me is an experiment that's evolving over the years in different spaces, and to understand that it doesn't, in all these spaces that you work with, the same questions arise, the same challenges are there, and it makes the world like this. It makes this idea of nation completely fake, completely imagined, and it's maybe you want to comment on what I say.
Says a lot, yeah. No, it's nice to listen to you. I think maybe time to questions, or what do you think?
A long time ago, I traveled to Bali. I was researching ritual and ceremony, and I was introduced to the head psychiatrist of the Mental Health Institute, who was the world's renowned expert on ritual. Amazing man, Dr. Denny. And he said something, he said, first you learn the language. Learning the language, you learn how the people think, how they treat each other, and what they see in the world. It's a very simple statement. And it's doing live Biennale, it's interesting because we bring in people from all over the world, and English is my mother tongue, but it's not everybody's mother tongue, but the festival is in English. So I never quite believe anyone that isn't from English mother tongue because they're translating their thoughts already. Also, I live with a Japanese woman, and she thinks of things in a totally different way than I do. But somehow English has masked all that stuff. And at festivals all over the world, the common language is always English. More and more and more and more. The land we're on, it wasn't English. The First Nations children were taken away and put in residential schools to de-learn their language. So I find that very interesting, sort of the fake mother tongue, fake Finn kind of territory, and I guess that's why people perform, is because it doesn't involve language necessarily.
Yeah, performance is in that sense it's a universal language.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
I'd like to thank Nathalie and Willem both for this, and again, if anybody wants to make any comments or has any ideas.
I have two quick questions. I have a political question for Nathalie and a non-political question for Willem. The political question is this. Given this reification of culture within the political entity, within this sort of will of the nation to define what culture is and define it coextensively with the nation state as opposed to the way culture, small c, has developed within the state. Is performance art within a country transcultural, even if it's performed by native people from that country, if the focus is to deny this reified culture that is coextensive with the nation state? So are you being transgressive and, in effect, internally decolonizing and transnational, even if you're a native of that country, by doing this kind of work within the political structure? And my question for Willem is, what's that? Doesn't matter.
But you know, a lot of communities are already self-colonizing, and it's always transcultural because people are coming from different places. They don't know each other. In Gabon, there's only 1.3 million people. It's very small. But there's 52 languages. And within those 52 languages, there are different dialects, and people are changing the language. And it's not about this idea of authenticity anymore, you know. I mean, people talk about their culture as this is authentic, this is our roots. But how far do the roots go? A lot of the roots were planted from other nations across Europe or, you know, across the water. But it becomes in the imagination, it becomes the history, it becomes the fixed culture. It's the same mentality, you know, as in Europe. It's nothing, but it's the extent to how much you create a fixed identity. And this is about political power. This is a masculine space. It's a very masculinized space when you are in West Africa, or a lot, because in East Africa it's the same, South Africa even worse. So it's really maybe about demasculinizing a little bit the space. And you have to know, it's so ingrained, the violence in here, and even more so in South Africa. We talk about apartheid, you know, officially, politically being finished in the 90s, but when you are there, you are living it still in 2015, and it's a huge genocide still continuing, you know. So, but it's also when you're working with communities from, you know, they all have same linkages, for example, but it's just a question of power. No, we are different from them because we are better, because it's all about who's on top of who. And this is a form of self-colonization. We are doing that to ourselves. It's the same anywhere else. So for me, when I say performance, you know, I say art, it's a form of language that you construct this language. You don't self-construct yourself, you construct it in the space itself, in dialogue within the community. And there's a meeting point eventually. There's really a meeting point that happens and start to shift things, but it takes a while. And it's much better, I found that the shift happened within the younger people, much better, and the women than with the men. That's all. I don't know, does that clear your question?
Yeah, I think that that's what I was asking. And that business about language is a nice segue to my question for you. So Nietzsche wrote in Beyond Good and Evil, probably dishonestly, at least for him, but definitely provocatively, that we write as much to be misunderstood as to be understood.
And then the words are finished.
So culture, small c, the space of habit and custom that we live in, informs culture, capital C, our artistic practice. So I don't know, it just died. So the question is, when curating a deliberately transcultural festival, to what extent does the transcultural element, this idea of people creating culture capital C in a different culture small c context, to what extent is it designed to be understood and to be meaningful and to express ideals of either sameness and or difference, or universality or particularity on the one hand, and to what extent is it deliberately transgressive and designed to be not understood because you've taken it completely out of the context that informed the artist?
Yeah. Well, I think well, when I'm curating or when I'm busy with such a festival, and I think the first idea is the most important, and that is already, it's in itself already a provocation. So, and it is also, I like that. I don't know if I mean it, but I think it's my nature to be provocative. So that's why I come to these ideas, and that's why I do it also. And I like, but I don't want to give some more meaning with it, or I don't want you to understand it even, you know, because I respect you as a human being, and I think you are wise enough to have your own thoughts about. But what I like to present to you, like, is okay, when I'm creating a festival, is this festival. When I'm doing my performances, then that's what I want to present. My performance, my poetic version of what I have been processing. You know?
When we are invited as artists in this kind of space, we all come from the same narrative that we are expected almost to present something that, you know, come from our culture. You know, well, she's African, so she's going to do something African. So a lot of the artists, they have to deal with this all the time of what is authentic, because the more authentic you are, the better, because I am fitting in your fantasy. I fit right there. If you don't, there's a problem. You create a confusion. You create people start to think. They start to break away. And this is very important. And when the artists meet to create such a space, they're challenging this exoticization, because all of a sudden, people have to, they expect, oh, but I was expecting a little bit of dance and bananas or singing. Really, you are invited. And I think also it's about the economy here. The economy also, when you create those frames of festival, it's already an economy. What is expected in that space? What are you supposed to answer? What are the categories? What are the criteria? So when you do, festival is all about, it's a sponge, it's porous holes. So you are investigating the porous holes and little lights coming through this very politicized, conventional economy. Yeah, so it's all about, is what I call in French we have this saying, is like the economy of darkness. So it's a kind of gentrification that happens in cities in France, where the mixed communities that were part of it become excluded, by slowly they are put into light. So because we say that the darkness is important to survive, to find alternatives, to find your own space, to survive. But once you are put completely in light, completely in the panopticon zone, suddenly you are frozen. So in terms of economy, arts and culture, you see a lot of spaces don't work anymore or are frozen because of this. So it's all you understand this idea of economy. So it's all about investigating how you're going to create a different dialogue. And also the artists, they critique each other when they present work, and it forms new questions, new formations. How then, after that, one festival is just not one event, it's a journey. And it creates a question, and then it shifts, and it moves on. And then so this would happen with fake Finns, then fake nations, then modest tongue. There was a different application, a different question each time. Yeah, and how do you escape from this format of the conventional economy? It's very difficult, I have to say. Every time, if I am invited somewhere and they expect me to dance with a straw skirt and bananas, and they don't see that because it's not African enough, it's not authentic, because I'm not dark enough, it's not authentic. No, really, all the time. And for me, that's unbelievable. But it's part of an economy. Why you have to... it's all about forming that, because, for example, the image, the stereotypes, the representations that we find in people, that we think of people, that we project, that's our own imagination. That's what we learn. That's what's been indoctrinated, but it's part of reality, but it's not part of a real history. If you maybe project something on me, I don't recognize myself in your mirror. I have different mirror, it's very broken, or I have different reflections. So it's, and it's but this is the critique, it's to see how difficult it is for us to absorb. We have lost a very important, fundamental, universal language within each other. Yeah, and it's it's an investigation,
I still would like to say something because you say also we have lost something. I mean, we have to realize that this whole idea about nations, it's quite new. It's only like 150 years ago. So that's where we the people invented, no, not we the people, but nations were invented at that time, Before that, it was more a scattered, there was some king and there were kings and there maybe sometimes a queen also, but it was not this nation. It came in the late 1800s something, so it's quite recent that we are dealing with. And it's funny to see then also like how nationalism is rising everywhere. You know, the world is globalizing, and people are, because they feel like, oh shit, now we don't have any borders anymore because the global community, and then they hang on to some kind of nationality, and suddenly a flag and whatever becomes important, and you ask yourself like, what is it, you know? Flag? No, I also know. Right. Yeah, sure. But it's not only.
Okay. Why? Because it's a question of economy.
Yeah.
You know, power. To move the capital. So.
Sure. That's the global thing, but also it's also a fact that at this time, you know, we are informed of what is happening, of some kind of traffic accident in Brazil, and somebody fell over a banana in India. I mean, this kind of news. We have to be busy with everything. We cannot anymore. So we are over-informed by everything and anything, but not getting a sense of what is real, or what is really going on.
That is
somewhere.
the point. So is information or is manipulation?
Yeah. Information is manipulation.
Depends.
One thing that's very important to mention is this idea of cultural amnesia, especially in a post-state of war, post-state of conflict. So even we live in a world where we forgot, our memories are blocked from past genocides and present genocide, present Holocaust that are going on, yes. And this idea of Europe also constructed itself through the war. Yeah, it's constructed identity through the war, through looking at the other, through trade, through, you know, and you see it. I mean, you just to be specific, for example, you know, you see it in Germany when the war is over, the Soviets come, Russians, Americans. One of the first things that happened when the concentration camps are liberated, who goes in it? The Germans. The Soviets used them until 1958. It's a long time. After the war, the women in Berlin who reconstructed the city, most of them raped by the Soviets. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What kind of generation does that produce after? What kind of, you know, the trauma? And we internalize our trauma. We are told to forget our traumas and to deal. It's our way of survival. And how communities, how politics try to, you know, it's a form of re-slavery all over again. Mm-hmm. And this also is very important to know, is about constructing identity and recreating this idea of nation. It's of power to say, but look, we are an empire. You know, it doesn't mean anything. It's just to reconstruct the idea of the identity of a nation or population, I would say, that's completely broken.
I agree.
Yeah. So all these children that grew up without fathers from that generation, they pass that trauma to their grandchildren, and now we are in the same space as these grandchildren. So we always say about, you know, of course, the condition for everybody in the country is not so good, but you have to understand also the history there and the trauma. Nobody talk about it in Germany. Only in the 90s, only in the 80s and 90s we start to make films about the war, what happened. Only in the 70s and 80s, the first director, Fassbinder, makes a movie about the Gastarbeiter, about the guest workers that come and work in Germany. And now only in 2013 we hear about the story of Afro or African Germans from before the First War, how they survived the Second War, how they were exterminated also. There's this cultural amnesia of history completely. So that gives way for this idea of nationalism and fascism and patriotism to instate its space. Yeah, because we do this to our memory. We don't want to deal with our traumas. What you know, when you speak to, it's not very easy to talk about your trauma. It's so much easier to fill them with addictions instead. So we live in countries, illegal cities, with too many addictions. Yeah.
That's so funny. Like, I thought I had a question, and your last answer, I don't know what to ask now, because I'm still processing what you just said, that I don't know what so I'm going to make an observation in terms of what I thought I was coming here for and what I end up receiving, which I think is really quite fascinating. I knew nothing about this. I thought I was coming here for a conversation on transnational curatorial practices. That was the title that actually brought me here. And I'm struck by how the conversation about transnational curatorial practices has taken us through questions around politics, around power, around, it might seem as if we are, as I'm talking, I'm actually making sense of it, so also work with me. It's been about economics, it's been about nation states, it's been about gender, particularly it's been about gendered violence, it's been about immigration, it's been about memory, it's been about trauma, it's just, the list goes on in many ways. So I'm left thinking, what is the condition to actually create art? Or what's the condition for artists within this kind of really loaded space of either belonging or not belonging to a place, or trying to make home in a place that you know you are not wanted? These are some of the things that I'm thinking through as I'm hearing you guys talk about your practices within these different spaces that you're trying to negotiate. So maybe if you guys can maybe help us think through these questions, especially thinking about art within these very charged spaces. And also, I'm actually quite struck also, Nathalie, by how you talked about ways of how people in Gabon, for example, the conversation you have with Mbembe about Gabon is a bullshit, Ghana, Nigeria, you went on listing these names as being actually this creation, but yet people from there would think of themselves as, if Ghana, my context, would be Ashanti, it would be Ghana, it would be Ewe. So there's these kind of, what would be called tribal, so these indigenous cultures. So talking about transnational, you're talking about indigenous communities within these contexts. So I'm curious, how do we think transnational outside of the framework of nation states, and more in terms of the state, the conditions that you provide in terms of what you say in rural, I'm hearing indigeneity, I'm hearing about indigenous context. So these are some of the things that maybe I'm trying to, you guys can, brought to my attention, which I wasn't expecting to be thinking through. So thanks for that, yeah. So I don't know whether it's a question, but more like I'm feeding back to you what you fed to me, and let's talk. Very good.
Well, I say in terms of the key words that you've given back, it's, for me, this idea of transculture is about fighting for your narrative, fighting for your archive. We don't know how to archive. We really don't know how to archive. It's a way, it's a format. You think of archiving of a collection of objects, taking objects together, how you curate those objects, how you put the story together and you narrate. But I think for me, this exactly in the form of performance, performativity, it gives you certain strategies to learn how to archive in such spaces. And this idea of nation, can you break away from transcultural in these nation states? It's very difficult. I have to think about it, actually, so I'm not going to give you the answer. But you have to understand that things are so ingrained as culture, as history, as having a root somewhere. For example, maybe you know about the African fabric. You know, they will say, oh, it's African, you know, it's from back then, and it's our cloth. No, it's from 1960. So these things, they were made in Netherlands and India mostly, designed, and they were given as a gift to the colonial countries from the 1960s onwards, when the countries first got their independence, and they were given by the former colonial countries as a gift, like, well done for your independence, you know, and this is and it just created a whole new mythology, a whole new elaboration of what identity was going to do, because then it created really you know, you have 54 countries, I don't know, about 1,001 tribes and 1 million languages, and then it became a form of to Africanize. Africa is a myth, it does not exist, you know, it's a very recent thing. It's a very recent narrative. And so sometimes you go, I don't know, even Nigeria, they say, oh, but this is, you know, this is part of our culture, it's ours, you know. And when a lot of this history is lost, although it's very recent, but it's instated as also part of form of resistance and part of collective memory to reappropriate it as our own. It's very important to instill your identity, and you can't. That's why it's so difficult to make things fluid. And this idea of transculturality there are different layers to it. You know, you can see it philosophically or literally. It's very contested. It's a very contested terrain, and we still have to discuss about it, and every dialogue will be specific to. For me, I think the differences between urban and rural spaces, especially, you know, but it's something that needs to be discussed further. I don't want to make a fixed answer. I think.
Yeah, well, no, that's the point. No fixed answers, and also no. You know, it's nice what you said, all these words and because that's exactly what is also what I am busy with, and I think my colleagues, as far as I know, we are all the time busy with this whole list of questions, you know, with this whole list of what you mentioned before, and because that's the basis for me, at least, for getting inspiration also to do my actions and to find new forms to express that. One more thing that I want to say is. With all this transcultural things, like okay, then you don't feel home or whatever, but that's also, you know, I never felt home wherever I was. I mean, I did not feel home in Holland also, so that's why I went away at some point. That was my choice. Nobody was chasing me away. It's kind of a free country, but I went away because I did not feel totally well there. I don't feel anywhere well, and that's the point, you know. And I only feel well with this fact that I'm not feeling well anywhere. And that's yeah, well, that's the power of things also. Okay.
No, he does feel well when he has his family. And this is what curating means, is about building an environment, a space where you can experiment and create this space where when you are the foreigner or when you feel nausea in whatever space you are in, you create a sort of community. It's a form of resistance, and this is where you can vomit. So there's this saying in Colombia that in La Paz, because of the high altitude, when you come there, you are sick for 1 week, and then you feel better. And they say, enough with the nausea, now let's start to vomit. Yeah, and I would say this as a form of resistance and decolonization, and this idea of transcultural practice. It's enough with the nausea, the memory, amnesia of the of the history or our biographies, and we start to form it. And
Nice ending of this. Wonderful evening. Huh? No.
I think it's the most appropriate ending too. I'd like to thank Nathalie and Wilhelm, who are both performing at Vancouver's Transcultural Festival, the live performance art Biennale. We have an incredible lineup of people here from many different places and states of mind, states of consciousness. The only thing that performance artists have in common, after curating for many years, writing and thinking, what is it? The big question you get asked every day, what is performance art? What is a performance artist? And you can reinvent it and reinvent it and reinvent it as time changes it and morphs it. There's only one thing that performance artists have in common. They're all exhibitionists. Please come to live and please don't vomit.